What's up, guys? So, I was thinking earlier today about why it is that a lot of people get into self-help, self-development. Maybe they study some spiritual teaching, they study some manifestation things, right? And why is it that most people don't really have true lasting success? I mean, a lot of people do, but there's a lot of people, I'd say the majority of people that study self-help in general, self-development, they don't really get the results that they're actually looking for. And I'm going to break it down for you guys right now. And the information I'm about to present, there's a lot of people pay for this information, and one thing that I've realized is I'm actually going to invest in like a whiteboard because I think it'll be a lot easier. I'm very visual, so I think it'll be a lot easier, and I'm sure that a lot of you are as well, for me to present these ideas in that fashion and format, because I think that'll make them stick more easily. But anyways, through studying self-help, let's just put the broad term of self-help, right? Because you could call manifesting teachings, they're all very well and good, but they're also there's so much overlap with that in general psychology, general just teachings that are a part of different disciplines. I was watching this video recently about Navy SEALs training, and how in Navy SEALs training, they teach them how to visualize. They teach them positive self-talk. And one of the things that they do before, let's say they do the ground proofing, which is where they have their hands tied behind their back and they have them float to the bottom of the swimming pool. Or I guess it's called drown proofing, right? And they visualize what that's going to be like. They visualize themselves, if they're swimming, if they're going for the underwater laps that they're doing, they have to visualize that. They visualize the entire process. They get themselves into a relaxed state. Very much the same way as Neville talks about, very much the same way as these people that do hypnosis talk about. So it's really all the same stuff. I've talked about this with multiple people that I've interviewed on the channel as well. So going at it from that standpoint, the general standpoint, improving yourself, going for what you want in your life, achieving a result that you want, whether it is learning how to drown proof, learning how to use tactical combat skills as a Navy SEAL, learning how to use these skills for athletic performance, using how to use them in business, in improving relationships, everything. You have three main tools that you're going to be using, right? You're going to have positive self-talk is just affirming. It's another way of saying affirming, because when you're affirming to yourself, you're using the affirmations, you're using that to inform your new way that you're speaking to yourself, right? So affirmations, then you've got visualization, which I just mentioned, and then you've got journaling, scripting, and all three of these things, they feed into each other. They're all essentially tools that you can use to change that vision that you're putting out, change that energetic vibration that you're putting out, because we're all made of energy, right? We can use visualization techniques, mental rehearsal to put out a new intention and new positive way of being. Let's say that we want to imagine our muscles contracting. They've done studies on this. You can imagine your muscles contracting more, and the people that have imagined it will still increase in strength versus people that didn't do that practice. The Navy SEALs, when they do these visualization techniques, then they're able to complete these things at a higher level than had they not implemented that in the training. That's why they use that in Navy SEALs. That's why they use it in the military. That's why they use it at the highest levels of government, because these things work. And there's that the CIA documents talking about all the things that they've learned about manifestation and whatnot at the Monroe Institute. And there's plenty of YouTube videos which you can look that up as well. But getting back to the point here is that is one way that we're putting a new imprint into the ether, into the, I guess there's so many different ways of saying it, but just the energetic plane, the 4D, whatever you want to call it, right? That is now being put out as an intention through your visualization. The same thing with positive self-talk or affirmations, robotic affirming. You are simply, again, instructing the new reality that you want to have based on that self-talk, because that is, as human beings, our thought forms and our speech our conscious speech and intention is one way that we have to instruct, direct, and set intentions. Then there is the act of writing it down on paper, and this is very powerful as well. I mean, you can also type it up on your computer, but I would argue there's probably there's a power in that tactical pen to pad sort of intention as well. And so putting that out, now you can look at it, you can reflect on it. I spoke with Lucy, right, about, that scripting formula, but this has been going on for a long time. And every single person, whether it's Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, all of these teachers, that Jim Rohn, people that do success coaching, life coaching, they all do this as well. You have to look at your goals. You have to write down your intentions, reflect upon them. And that is one way that you bring them into being as well, because now they're written there. It's like now it's all put down. Instead of it floating around up here all the time, okay, now I can look at it, read it, understand it, reflect upon it, and that solidifies it. There's something powerful about that as well. And again, there's other esoteric practices, when I was talking to Naya, she's talking about witchcraft and things, and they do writing things as well. They write things down, they put out intentions, they cast these things into the ether, and that's how they are able to set these intentions. So these things are all at every level of self-help, self-development, reality creation. These are the tools, the bread and butter. Now, the problem that people run into when they're doing this is that they do this thing, they do these exercises, they learn all the techniques, right? You can learn all the best techniques. You can study Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks, you can study Tony Robbins, study the best of the best people that have the best information out there. But what happens is that you do it, and then, this is why I wish I had a whiteboard, because I would, and maybe I'll do another video of this where I actually draw this out for you guys. But on one hand, you're putting out this new positive thought. This is you right here. You're in the middle, right? You're putting out these new intentions. You're putting out this energy into the ether. Positive thought forms, positive affirmations, visual, all of that's great stuff. It's happening, right? You're doing it. Now you are sitting here though. What is all this over here? Well, this is all the past story that has been run over many, many times. And, Joe Dispenza and people from a neuroscience background talk about the neural pathways. Once you've run over that pathway so many times, it's like a river. And it's like a riverbed. Once it gets used to, once the water flows down the river, it's very much easy for it to go down that path again and again. And that's why you see when you come out here, I'm in Arizona right now, when you look at the rocks, they're completely weathered, right? There's all these markings on the rocks because the water has traveled down those rocks for years and decades and centuries, and thousands of years, to be honest, that's created those patterns in the rocks. So the mind tends to go back to what it's familiar with. It doesn't tend to go back to, just because you created this positive intention over here, the mind, the animal brain, the reptilian brain is comfortable with this stuff over here, even though it's a bunch of trash that we don't want. We don't consciously want it, but we can't help ourselves because that reptilian aspect of our brain is still there. There's still that aspect of our brain that is fight or flight, that is used to looking out for the tiger, looking out for the wolf, looking out for self-preservation, in a mode of self-preservation, not in a mode of thriving. So it'll trick us, it'll play tricks on us. The mind will deceive us. It'll say, oh, you need to do this, it's more comfortable, you're more used to this. And this all goes on subconsciously mostly, by the way. It's not really like we're having, this whole internal dialogue. Like a lot of the time it's subconscious, that we just gravitate towards these old behaviors because that's what we know, that is what's familiar to us. So let's say that you had a job situation where you got fired from work, right? Well, maybe it was one of your earlier jobs, or maybe you had a situation where a teacher like lambasted you in front of the other students and came at you and said, yo, you did this wrong, or you're not a good student, and whatever that old story is. Well, you have that story back here that's running your operating system. Even though you put out this new intention, even though you wrote it down, even though you visualized it, when you're not aware of it, when you're not doing that act of the intention setting, that act of the affirming, whatever it is that you've decided to do, whatever practice you've adopted, you're going back, you're reverting to this. The mind can't help it. So one thing that we need to do is to be aware of it first. And a lot of this happens when we have our triggers, right? We have different things that trigger us. And these things have happened because of some event from our childhood. Now, let's use an example, right? Let's use an example that when you were in school, your teacher blamed you for something that you didn't do. Some kid in class told on you, and they said you did something, you copied somebody else's homework, or you stole this toy from some other kid, and your teacher sits you down, the whole classroom down, points you out, guilts you, shames you, makes a fool out of you. Well, now the little version of you, little Timmy, little Sarah, whatever your name was, now this whole identity here has been hurt. You're carrying around this hurt. You're carrying around this, why did they do that to me? And you're carrying around this story of, and so what happens is later on in life, let's say that you're working that job and something happens, you get accused of something, attacked, or in your relationship, you get accused of something that you didn't do. It brings up this trigger, and you get this disproportionate response, this disproportionate emotional response to something that, when you're solid, if you, let's say that you didn't have that, let's say that you didn't have that trigger, you would probably be pretty neutral about it. You'd probably be like, oh yeah, no, I didn't do that, right? And you wouldn't take it on. You wouldn't fall into that emotional frame of them blaming you, of them guilting it onto you. And you would just be like, no, like, it wasn't me, like, I didn't do that. And it would be pretty much a non-issue. Now, generally speaking, whenever anybody gets attacked in a very emotional way, the natural inclination is to defend yourself, right? The natural inclination is to say, no, I didn't do that. But the difference would be is that you don't fall into that emotional, you don't get so triggered by it, right? So the important thing first off is to be aware of the trigger. And all of us are different. All of us have different triggers because all of us have had different experiences. Some people have abandonment issues. Some people have a fear of failure. Some people have a fear of success. Some people don't want to shine too bright. They don't want to take up too much space in the room because for whatever happened, right? They had some sort of bad experience. You had a bad experience. And all of us have had these experiences to some degree or another. Certain people less than others. Some people get over the experiences. Some people, everybody's life journey is completely different. So what's important is that you understand what those are so that you can observe them. And what's going to happen when you observe them, you're not going to, that's the other thing, is that people on this path, people give up too soon because they say, oh, it's too hard. I'll never be able to do it, because they still give in to the emotional reaction. And that's okay. You're still going to be triggered. All that matters is that you're aware of it this time. It's micro improvements upon that baseline that you've been at, right? And so when you start to slowly pay attention, you'll catch yourself a little bit more. Maybe you'll catch yourself like maybe you got triggered, and then usually you're triggered for days, or you're triggered for a long ass time, like all day, all night, right? But maybe like now you're like, oh, you know what? I realized what this is. It was a trigger. So now you're only triggered for like a couple hours, right? And it'll just keep getting better and better and better. The more that you work on it, the more that you improve it. But that's the journey. You have to make that journey. You have to be able to recognize it and then make those slow improvements. Now what's going to happen is once you're able to do that, you're going to get back. This is center, right? This is you. And you're going to focus on those new intentions more. It's going to take you less and less time slowly every single time to snap back to this new vision that you've been holding, this new intention that you've been putting out with the techniques that we're talking about, with those things, right? With that positive self-talk, with imagining that new, better version of things. And you can even do this with your triggers. Let's say that you recognize that that is a trigger for you, right? Getting blamed for something, getting attacked for something. Well, now you have this new version of yourself that you're imagining, right? And now you're imagining this version of yourself that's able to be calm, that's able to remain stoic in this situation, that's able to not feel as if you have to fall into this argument or this frame battle. You're just like, no, like you're confident in who you are. You're comfortable with who you are. You know that you didn't do anything wrong. And so you're not going to buy into that. You're not going to fall into that emotional dumping or emotional volatility that somebody's trying to engage you in. Because it's like, and I did a video about this before, but it's like this jack in the box popping up, trying to get you emotionally off center. And this time you're just going to be like, yeah, like you're not going to give it. You're not going to let it get you off center. You're just going to be calm, cool, collected in the face of that thing popping up. And so over time, those things will begin to shift for you. You'll begin to have these inner shifts where you're able to recognize, you're almost like your awareness has gotten bigger, and you can see yourself you can be aware of yourself, be aware of your triggers, and be aware of the fact that you don't need to do that anymore. You don't need to do that. You don't need to, you can defend yourself. You can tell somebody no, like I didn't do that. But again, it's not coming from that hurt place where you're really like triggered by it. And you'll be able to tell the difference. So over the course of time, if you keep going back to these old stories, if you keep repeating these old things, and obviously your triggers is one thing that's going to cause you to go back to that. If you start to get a hold on that and you start to shift your attention more and more so that your baseline goes from here to here to here to here to here. And it's very incremental, but soon enough, your baseline's gonna be over here when before it was over here. And you're gonna be on a different life path. You're gonna be on a different timeline because the way that you're showing up is completely different than the way this version of you showed up. And so again, it's about that awareness, and it's about not beating yourself up for not being perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. None of us are perfect. And it's about just that journey with yourself. As long as you're improving, you're making progress. And you'll be able to tell because though you won't get so emotionally thrown off. You won't fall into that emotional roller coaster so often. So, this is one big thing that gets people caught up. It's like they want to put this new intention out, but they haven't gone in, they haven't done the work in terms of what is it that is really triggering me? What are my old beliefs? What are my old patterns? And, I have that guide that you guys can download below to figure out what your limiting beliefs are. You're also going to want to figure out what the triggers are, because the triggers in some sense can be different than your limiting beliefs. They can be correlated, but they might be a little bit different, right? If you have a belief, like let's say that you just get really angry when somebody accuses you of something or attacks you, that's not necessarily contingent on a belief. It could be that it's just an old wound. It's like opening up an old wound, and Eckhart Tolle talks about that, the pain body of like this incident that has happened in the past where you felt treated unjustly and unfairly, and it could be that your strong sense of justice is what causes that to be a trigger for you. It doesn't have to necessarily be any sort of really negative self-image, but it could be correlated. So it's worthwhile doing the investigation. But really, when you find yourself getting emotionally thrown off center, that's when you're going to be able to recognize what your triggers are. And that's what's going to, the more that you recognize that, the more that you're going to be able to shift to this and consistently be going in this direction. And that's all we're looking for, is that trajectory. Is the trajectory here, or is the trajectory still here? Because what happens is, even if we put out the positive intention, if we still go back to being triggered, if we still go back to entertaining all of this over here, it cancels each other out, you see? And then we're still going on this path, which isn't the life that we want. We wanted this life. We wanted this life over here going in this direction. So it's very important to be aware of this. It's very important to, once you become aware, to slowly shift the way that you are engaging with these situations. So that's one thing that I noticed, guys. That's one thing that I noticed that causes a lot of people to, they'll go on, they'll do the work, let's say the work, they'll do the positive intention, all that, but then they'll go complain on the internet, right? And they'll go and vent about, oh, this person did this and blah, 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 and nothing ever works. Well, now you're just canceling out all that shit. The more that you complain about that shit, you're putting out that same expectation that's going to bring you back the same way that you've been, because you're putting out that. There's some quote by this guy, I think it's Benjamin Disraeli. He's like, never complain, never explain. And it's an interesting quote. I find that a lot of the time, for me personally, like, so if somebody does that to me, I actually, that situation that I brought up with you guys, that's something that happened to me when I was younger. This teacher of mine, they like blame me, and it's quite an involved situation, because the girl that blamed it on me didn't like me for this other reason, and that's why all of that panned out like that. But when people really accuse me of something, it really does bring up that old situation for me. I think the old, not the situation itself, but the hurt from that situation, because it's such an impressionable young age that it happened to me, that it affected me, right? And so we all have these things, and it's important to get in touch with them, bring awareness to them. That's the only way that we're gonna be able to change them, the only way that we're gonna be able to improve. Otherwise, we're gonna keep repeating the same old cycle, the same bad habits. And interestingly enough, for me, if I was to, and I don't ever do this, that's the thing. I don't ever come at people in this angry type of way. But let's say that I really did think that somebody did me wrong, right? That I think somebody like fucked me over and I called them out on it. And then they explained to me like, no, like I didn't do that. If they defended themselves, I could see if they fell emotionally into it, I could see how that would in a way make them look like, why are you defending it so hard if you didn't do it, right? But if they defended themselves in a calm way where they said, no, like, that wasn't me, I didn't do that, I did this. Let's say that let's say that you have a few people staying over at your house, somebody knocks something over and they're just like, no, I didn't, that wasn't me. That's maybe more believable, or maybe more, if somebody's like, no, that wasn't me. And they have this like real kind of emotional way that they're reacting to it. It kind of does make it look like, well, why are you defending it so hard if it wasn't you, right? And that's something that, we all have to learn, right? But that's the sad thing is that that's not always the case. It could be that it's activating somebody's trigger, like in my case, where because it's activating somebody's trigger, something happened to somebody, and it's not even really about the situation. And I did a video about that recently, about your emotions are really more of a reaction to something in the past than this present thing. But that's where the power is of being calm and relaxed with the situation. Even if somebody is blaming you, even if someone is trying to guilt you, trying to shame you, your ability to remain calm in this situation, now you're not making it a bigger situation than it would have been, right? Because if you feed into it and you go there into that place, into that emotional state, now you're almost making it a bigger situation than it needed to be. Because you can be the anchor, so to speak. You can be the voice of reason, right? And you can there's also various techniques you can learn to like diffuse these conflict type situations, which I'm not going to cover in this. But basically, the main idea is being aware of it, being aware of your triggers, being able to check your emotions at the door, your volatile emotions, all the negative emotions, and being able to, in certain cases, you're going to want to just walk away, especially if the person has a repeated, or the situation or the event, let's say that you're going into work and every single time you're getting triggered because your boss is just an ass, or the people at work are just disrespectful. You're going to want to figure out a way to get yourself out of that, because otherwise it's going to keep bringing you into this area, right? That's another aspect that people in the spiritual community don't talk about as much, but people in self-development do, is that it's very important the environment that you're around. So, and that includes like your friends, that includes the people that you're around, the people that you spend time around. So that's going to be the people at your workplace, your family. If your family, unfortunately, if your family is doing this every single time, blaming you, guilting you, shaming you, you're going to want to remove your attention from them, because it's just going to keep you over here. You're going to want to start going in this direction and surrounding yourself with better quality people. With that being said, guys, much love as always. Drop this video with a like, hit me with a subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.